Well, I did bring a textbook.
Did you now?
I did. I wanted to go with a low ball, and that is basic biostatistics.
Yes.
So I chose no formulas, nothing. Now there is a bold word, so lucky you. But there's one paragraph that I highlighted, or I have this little note on, and it's just on the word observation. So what does that mean in biostatistics?
Cool.
So would you be willing to read through, as you're a student, you're taking one of my stats classes. I only teach one, scratch that. And read this, and going from the mind of a student, what does mindful reading look like? What does mindless reading look like when looking at just, say, this paragraph?
Yeah.
You want to give this a shot?
Yeah, let's give it a shot. Viewers should know that, honestly, I have not looked at this book.
Nope.
I have no idea what's in here, other than that it's about basic biostatistics.
Yeah.
So let's see what happens.
Yeah, we have no idea.
No, I have no idea. This could be a total failure, but let's just do it and see what happens. All right. Okay, so here's the paragraph marked. All right. I'm, for the benefit of viewers, I'm just going to go ahead and read this out loud. And then, but first I'll prep by saying that, we want to use the same approach we want to use with any kind of mindfulness meditation, where we're setting an intention. And that's important, right? Because if you're just opening a textbook and all you know is, I got to get through this, there's no, other than just having to get through it, there's no sort of sense of purpose to it. So set your intention. What do I hope to achieve from this? May I get clarity about the concepts that I'm supposed to learn here? Something like that.
Right. Clarity, I like that.
And then curiosity, got to cultivate that here. And with biostatistics, I mean, I happen to live with some people who like statistics. They get excited about this stuff, but it's not my go-to, right? But it's there, and it's important concepts to learn. So I'm going to cultivate some curiosity here. What can I get out of this?
Yeah.
Caveat: I'm jumping in here into this textbook. I have not read the pages before it, nor have I read the pages that follow it.
Nope.
So some of this is out of context.
Very much.
And we want to be, as often as possible, when we're doing mindful reading, we want it to be in context, right? So like if I have a reading assignment, I'm going to want to read it from the beginning to the end. Ideally. And that way, when I get to some place in the middle, I have a sense of why I'm there, So that's part of mindful reading too. Yep. Asking the question, why am I here? What does this mean?
I just dropped you off camping in the mountains.
That's right.
And be like, have fun, enjoy nature.
Yeah. I need a compass, Dan. And so the other thing I want us to think about when we're doing this kind of practice is a few steps to this. First one is check in. Where's my mind right now? Am I stressed out? Am I distracted? If I'm distracted, this is a great opportunity for 60 seconds of present mind awareness. Just kind of take that 60 seconds, bring my attention to right now, where it matters. So that's something to check in on. Am I ready now to bring this attention? Sleep. Do I have enough sleep on board, or will I fall asleep very soon after? Right. So that's one thing. First one is check in. Second one, I just call it take note. And so what you're going to take note of as you read the paragraph or whatever it is that you're reading, right, is you're going to take note of points of discomfort. So in a previous module, we talked about sitting with discomfort. We're going to bring attention to any discomfort, try to really know it and learn from it. And the second part is, where do we find connection? So there's things I assume there are going to be things in this paragraph here that either cause me discomfort, or I should say that cause me discomfort, and some things that maybe I connect with. And when I say take note, I mean literally take note. Like jot something. You have a piece of notebook paper out of your notebook, or if you own the book and you're comfortable and you're keeping the book right in the margin.
That's my favorite.
Yeah. I do a lot of the fancy term for that is marginalia. That's fun. And what I'll say in this taking note part, and I won't be writing in your book, but I might be having a conversation with the author while I'm reading. So think about it as a conversation. Yeah. So part of it is I'm noticing my discomfort. There's going to be things I don't know. And, who likes to who likes to really reflect on how much they don't know, right? So there's discomfort there. And then there's also this sense of connection sometimes that comes in, and this is my opportunity to actually have a conversation with the author. They've had their turn. They've written this text. Now it's my turn to respond, So I can do that too. So that's all in taking note. And I mean that literally and figuratively, take notes. But not notes like highlighting things or whatever. Notes like, what's coming up for me, and what do I want to say back to this author? You know? And then the last part is really focused on taking time to notice what I took note of. So it's noticing what you noted, And that's your response. You're responding. Now, sometimes the discomfort comes from not knowing, let's say. And so if I wrote down the stuff that I didn't know, like what is he talking or she talking about here, or they talking about here, I might circle that at the end and go, this is something I need to go deeper on. A concept, a vocabulary word, a turn of phrase. I'm going to circle the note that I took on that and go deeper, And the second part is some things you just got to let go, So if I'm feeling discomfort, like self-doubt, where I'm like, oh, I am so terrible at this, I'm an idiot, let that go. Bring your non-judgmental awareness to that and let it go. Some stuff needs to be dropped, and some stuff needs to be picked up. And the stuff that needs to be picked up is where the learning happens. So, all right, here we go. Okay. This is the paragraph, chapter 1, under the heading measurement. The term observation, it's bolded, refers to the unit upon which measurements are made. So first pass through that sentence, I'm going to tell you that I have no idea what it just said because my mind was more focused on what I sounded like reading it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm going to notice that. I'm going to take note of that, Okay, so I'm going to read it again. The term observation refers to the unit upon which measurements are made. So what comes up for me there, just in that one sentence, is unit, the word unit. I'm not entirely comfortable with what a unit is. And so I'm gonna take note of that. Observations may correspond to individual people or specimens. So what's coming up for me when I think of a specimen, I'm thinking, what, blood? Or, spit? Or, this is biostatistics. It's got to be blood or spit. What else is it? I don't know. Yeah. So it's something else.
Those are the main two.
Okay.
Yep.
I knew I'd get it. See, I know something. Observations may correspond to individual people or specimens. They may also correspond to aggregates upon which measurements are made. Not everybody's comfortable with the term aggregates. This is a multisyllabic word that we don't see in the world too often.
No.
So if I were a student, I might flag that.
Yeah. There's a lot of flags in that book.
Yeah, okay.
And even statistics itself. Now you're bringing up something that I always deal with, and you probably deal with too, with students who maybe English is the second language, is that the terminology of public health statistics, there's certain words that are used elsewhere, or they're not used, and vice versa. And so you flagging that as a great example of something that I am mindful for my students on difficult situations. Yeah,
and so there's going to be in many different kinds of texts, whether it's biostatistics or philosophy, taking a philosophy class, taking an English class, taking an anthropology class. Every field has its own jargon. And so your job as a student isn't to just assume that you know it or to blow it off. Your job is to cultivate curiosity. And you go, well, you know what? I am not familiar with that word. I'm flagging it. And I'm going to take a little bit of time later on to look it up and figure out what it actually means. Because then you're starting to learn the jargon of that field, but you're also engaging more deeply with what the author wanted to communicate to you. Because the author obviously wasn't too concerned about using the word aggregates. That says something about the author or authors. I'm not sure. B. Bert Gerstmann. If you're out there, Bert, maybe you should define aggregates for your readers. Anyway. For example, we can measure the smoking habits of an individual parentheses, in terms of pack years, for instance, or we can measure the smoking habits of a region, for example, per capita cigarette consumption. So this was what came up for me in this. I found a point of connection here. What came up for me was, I could almost smell the cigarette smoke when I read that sentence. And so there's some vibing going on there, as you pointed out earlier. And so now I'm interested. Now I'm interested, whereas it was so abstract before, but now we're talking about smoking and I'm kind of interested.
Okay.
So I'm noticing
it's bringing
that.
some applicable components to your life on that.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's important for me to notice my engagement has changed. My level of engagement has changed.
It went from this boring black and white to, hold on, what is this?
Yeah, wait a minute, what are we talking about?
Okay.
In the former case, the unit of observation, so then we see the word unit again, so this is helping me. I'm noticing that I was confused about it before, let's say.
And it said unit of measurement, and now it's saying unit of observation.
Unit of observation is a person. In the latter, the unit of observation is a region. So I'm starting to learn a little bit about how statistics works here. And I'm noticing, where I'm finding the energy, and I'm noticing where I lose the energy. And again, we don't want to decide based on that what interests me and what doesn't interest me. I just want to notice where my energy is.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm challenging myself to in some way engage with the areas that I don't have energy around, because it may turn out that's important as part of the learning experience. But this is where I have the potential of looking on my own into this kind of stuff, jargon or whatever it might be, flagging that, circling it, whatever, picking it up, as I said earlier. And maybe picking it up means actually talking with the instructor or talking with a fellow student or taking advantage of another opportunity to go deeper on these kinds of things, right?
Yeah.
And putting down some stuff, dropping some stuff, which is, my reactivity around the low energy part leads me to this kind of knee-jerk feeling like this isn't interesting. Like there's something objectively uninteresting about this content, and rather than my sort of discomfort around engaging with it.
And you're holding on to that piece rather than any of the other pieces that you maybe were neutral at or you were excited about to be curious on.
Exactly.
And then now you're holding on to that, but just let go of
That's
that.
right.
Yeah.
That's right. So what I would say is, as you can see, that took more time than me skimming the paragraph, right? So in some cases, I really do need to skim that paragraph because I've got deadlines and I've got stuff I need to know.
Absolutely.
And I know how to find it, right? But in other cases, I might want to take some time out to spend some time in that forest of words, to use that metaphor that you brought up, and then my engagement starts to become more in depth, more mindful, and I have more energy actually that comes from that. So that when I'm skimming or going deep later on, it'll have a higher impact on my learning.
Yeah, you're thinking about your thinking. You got some metacognition with it,
but not obsessing over the thinking.
Yeah,
just noticing without judgment in the present moment. Yeah.
So what's an observation?
A unit of observation.
Nice. This is what I do with my students: is ask these kind of questions, but then, in simple terms, if you have a row, like a column, like a table, right? You have your columns here and the rows here. You put the rows, and those are your observations. So if we were to get our height, weight, blood type, bring the blood back in, each of us is an observation.
Yeah.
Now, when you combine that with just another example and just talking through, but how do you share that?
Also that's what you're doing in this practice is you're making observations. So that's it. Totally dovetails with the whole point of that.
That was on purpose.
Too. Yes, I know. It's brilliant. It's seamless.
Is there anything else you'd like to share on mindful reading?
I would just say that, like every practice, try it out for short stints.
Yeah.
Because a lot of us are not, as I pointed out in the beginning, are not conditioned to doing this on a regular basis anymore. And so I would say start small and work your way up. Just like you started with 60 seconds of some kind of breath practice, present moment awareness practice, start out with 60 seconds of really some deep mindful experience of a paragraph of a book that you're going to sign, and then work your way up.
Yeah, start small.
Yep.
Thank you.
Cool. Thank you.